Hi everybody, Steve Searles. Ignore the little cut mark I got for shaving. Hope everybody's doing well right now. Today is story time. Story time. It's a real story though, true story. I'm not going to reveal all the details. Just keep the, names of the individuals anonymous. But it's a true story about what's happening in the greatest country on earth, United States of America, land of the not so free. Excuse me for the sarcasm. Couldn't help myself. Anyway, this is a story about a man and a woman, married, been married for many years, have an adult child, well, not an adult child, I'm sorry, graduating senior from high school. And the woman has a successful, but it's a small business, runs out of her house. The man was, and has been, an accountant for many years. I don't know exactly how much money he was making, but just looking at average salaries, entry-level accountants make, where he was living somewhere around $50,000 a year. And he's in his 50s, so I'm sure he was making more than $50,000 a year. And they had pretty good health insurance through their employer, or his employer, because, it's a lot better to get insurance through an employer than have, the self-employed person have to go out on the marketplace and find it, right? That's just the truth. You go on the exchanges, that were set up by the Affordable Care Act, and they did, and the insurance was a lot more than what they were getting. They had really good insurance. So, shortly, not too long. This happened happened this summer last year. The woman finds she has a stage 3 aggressive form of cancer. I'm not going to tell you what kind of cancer. And so she needs to have surgery and radiation and chemotherapy and, the whole 9 yards. And the man tells his employer, because you tell people about stuff like that comes out at work. You tell, hey, my wife has cancer. 2 days later, he's laid off. No explanation given. Never been an issue with his work performance. Boom. Suddenly they have to use COBRA Insurance. So not only do they lose all his income, there's at least $50,000 worth of income. They lose, they have to start paying for COBRA Insurance. And why would they pay for COBRA Insurance? And for those of you who don't know what COBRA Insurance is, it means that it's the law that allows people to continue paying for the insurance they had under the prior employer. Except now they have to pay the full amount. Instead of the employer kicking in some certain sum, now they have to pay in themselves. And those insurance premiums for their health care policy were around, they were expensive, over $1,000. And I believe right now we're at $1,500 per month. And that's just life. And that was the best insurance they could get, because they went on the exchanges and they looked and they saw, there's no insurance we can get this any better. And even if we got that, we'd still have to go through a high deductible that would wipe out everything. So they kept trying to pay the COBRA Insurance. And she had her surgery and chemotherapy. And they were fortunate. They qualified, for some help, not through the state, but through some charitable things, and Also had a GoFundMe account. That helped. And the man, for a while, the only job he could find was working at a grocery store. Yeah, literally. Well, this is what happens in today's America. You're over 50. You're a professional, and boom. Suddenly, people don't want to hire. There's younger people out there. They can hire those, right? They don't need to hire you. So he worked at the grocery store because they promised they could get him insurance. Okay, so just as he was about to get insurance there, he got another job. This time an accountant job, paid better, but it was a gig job. It wasn't guaranteed. It was only, well, it's for 6 months, and then we'll revisit whether we still think we need you. So it was a temp job. So if they needed him, and they hired him as a full-time employee, he'd get really good insurance. But they didn't. So meanwhile, they were spending down their savings. I mean, obviously they did get some money from the GoFundMe, like I said, and got some money from some other charitable sources to help. But this woman's trying to run her business, just like a lot of small business owners, and dealing with cancer, dealing with the treatments for cancer, has to take a very expensive drug for the next 5-6 years, however long, to prevent this very aggressive cancer from coming back. Because, hey, the surgery and the radiation and the initial chemo was successful. So, anyway, the man had this gig job, like I said, as an accountant. At the end of the gig job, 6 months, they said, sorry, we've decided not to renew your temporary contract. For whatever reason, they didn't explain it. They don't have to. So he had to go back to the grocery, working in the grocery store. Minimum wage, practically job, right? He's a cashier, or was a cashier. And he got exceptional performance reviews from people. He was the employee of the week several times. Customers, specifically commended him to his managers. And the only reason he's working at this grocery store again is to try to get insurance, because they couldn't keep afford, because they're still stuck on the COBRA insurance now. Okay, paying $1,500 a month. Paying on their mortgage for the house because they need the house because she runs her business out of the house. Okay, and I can't go into all the details, but it's critical that they keep the house for her business to exist. It would be a lot more expensive for her to go lease office space and so forth, and also have to pay rent or whatever, So the house is actually the cheapest option for her as a businesswoman. So he's back at the grocery store again, like I said, doing a very good job. One day, recently, he goes to, on a break, get a can of soda or something, some sort of drink, goes to the self-checkout, because, it's one item, and it won't scan. Won't scan. Tries it several times. Brings over one of the cashiers, one of the main other cashiers. They try to get it to scan. There's a problem. They tried some other stuff. It wouldn't scan. And at some point, the two of them were talking, and they forgot, that it hadn't scanned yet. And so, without thinking, both of them forgot that he hadn't paid for it, and he went off to his break with this drink that hadn't been paid for. $2 probably at the most, right? For a can of whatever. I mean, overcharge you at the grocery store, but I'm not going to name the name of this company, but it's a major company in the supermarket business. You would recognize it if I told you. So anyway, he goes off to his break room. Next thing he knows, they've called the cops on him. His manager, somebody in the security had seen that it hadn't been paid, because they have cameras everywhere. And they come in, and the cashier and he explained to the manager, and they explained to the cops, but this is the company's policy. They call the cops on you for not paying for, so even though he offered to pay for it right then and there. Gets to the police station, they run through all the stuff, and they release him, and I said, there's no crime here. There's nothing. We're going to convict you. Had no intent. This is, they had his testimony, they had her testimony, they had the video. So the cops let it go. No big deal. Well, it's still a big deal to this grocery company. Don't ask me why, but it was. So the store's manager, they go back to the store, and she says, well, or he or she, I don't know who, the gender of the store manager. The store manager said, we can't bring you back right now. You're on suspension until we let and he says, why? Because we already cleared this all up. And he says, well, it doesn't matter. It's company policy. I need to, bump this up, upstairs to corporate. Okay? Some corporate bureaucrat somewhere is going to decide whether this man keeps his job, whether he loses his ability to get health insurance, real health, better, cheaper health insurance for his wife, who's still paying, these high COBRA premiums, and trying to exhaust their deductible, and because they have this expensive drug that she has to take, so she didn't get, recurrence of her cancer. All right. Well, a couple days pass. They find out. Corporate says, so what? Zero tolerance. You're out. So his, so even though he had worked there before, even though he was a very credible individual, even though he was a very good employee, outstanding employee, as a matter of fact, as evidenced by, the plaudits he'd received from his customers and from the store itself. Zero tolerance. He's out. He's gone. No chance for health insurance. Now what do? COBRA Insurance premiums keep going up. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what's going to happen. This is America, ladies and gentlemen. This is America. Now, I'm sure this is not a surprise to anybody who African American or Native American or Latino, somebody who, and you're poor, and you probably know all about this bullshit. But for a lot of people, this is first time that's hitting them, and like I said, it could happen to anybody. It happened to this man and this woman. So now they have to choose. Do we pay for the health insurance and these medications that are to keep the cancer away, or do we pay the mortgage and keep her business going? Because without her business going, they have no income. None. Can't pay the mortgage, can't pay the bills. They need her business, but they also need health insurance. So I want to talk to specifically those of you who keep telling us that Medicare for all is a bad thing, that it's evil, that it's going to cost too much. There's been a lot of studies that's shown that's baloney. We already know countries that have single payer or universal health care coverage in other countries don't pay nearly as much. The United States spends the most money on its health care costs than any other nation on earth, and it's not even close. okay, as a percentage not only of our gross domestic product, but also as, in terms of total amount. And I mean, I think we pay double what almost the next closest country is, which has single payer, by the way. People wouldn't be forced to take jobs like, if they lost their job as a professional, a good paying job. They wouldn't have to be forced to immediately take the first job they could, a low paying job at a supermarket, because that supermarket offered health insurance. If we had Medicare for all, if we had single payer health insurance, people wouldn't be worried about losing their home. People wouldn't have to choose between, do I risk getting cancer, a recurrence of my cancer, or do I risk losing or do I lose my home instead, and my business? Every day there are stories like this out there, people. Every fucking day. And yet I still hear not just Republicans, but Democrats, a lot of Democrats, Democratic leaders who oppose Medicare for all. Why? Well, I think you know why. But I'll tell you why. Because they get lots of money donated to them by the big pharmaceutical companies, by the big insurance companies, and by probably lots of other healthcare providers that are making a lot of money off people, that are draining us. I can speak from personal knowledge here. I lost my job when I came down with an autoimmune disability, and I was forced to retire. And then my wife had cancer, and so we're still on her COBRA policy. We're still on that policy because it's still better than anything we could get in the state of New York, where I live, on the exchange. Has a lower deductible and premiums that are better or equivalent to what we could get. But as you know, it's different in every state. And last year alone, we spent over $38,000 out of pocket. $38,000. Our only income is, my wife was fortunate. She had pancreatic cancer. They thought she was going to die, so she got full Social Security disability, which means she's on Medicare. So that lowered our medical costs a little bit. But still, that's how much we paid out of pocket, because insurance doesn't cover all the treatments you need or all the medications you need. We're constantly fighting with the insurance companies to get, certain medications approved every fucking year. We go through the same bullshit to get medications approved for my wife. So, year to year, we don't know how much it's going to cost us. We have to keep dipping into our savings, and we're a little more fortunate, than the family I spoke to you about earlier. Our mortgage, by the time that was almost paid off, but still we've had to go into various other debt to continue to pay for healthcare costs. And at some point, if things don't get better, we're going to have to dip further into our savings. This is what Medicare, not having a single payer or a true universal health care like they have in, I don't know, Denmark, Norway, Switzerland, Germany, England, Canada. This is what it does to us. It forces people to stay in jobs they don't want to be in, or it forces them to not, look for better jobs. It forces them not to attempt, their own business, because the cost to do so, the cost of losing health insurance, would be too traumatic, especially when you're at an age when you start having medical problems. And these days, that's younger and younger, right? We're seeing more and more cancers, more and more autoimmune disorders at younger and younger ages, more people with diabetes at younger and younger ages, all sorts of very awful diseases that kill people, and that the treatments for which are, again, very expensive. And we have this crap health care, crappy insurance, overpriced medications, overpriced doctors. The other day, there was a story in the news about a woman who had a cesarean section, African American woman. I think it was in Florida, and she couldn't get. She went home and she was bleeding. And they called an ambulance, and the paramedics were saying that she didn't need. They weren't sure she could afford to pay for the ambulance drive, so they weren't going to take her unless they said, you can take her. You take her in your car. Well, she ended up dying because the ambulance paramedics were concerned that she couldn't pay, her bill if they took her. Well, why would they be concerned? Why wouldn't they just do that? You know why? Because they were told that. They were told by their employer, don't take people if you don't think they can pay. Don't do it. They saw a black woman, poor black woman. They assumed she couldn't pay. They knew their bosses would get all over them on this. So, this is real, people. And those of you who sit in situations where you have, nice incomes and nice homes and, good insurance, and you're not worried about this stuff, you have no idea what it's like to worry about that. It's bad enough when somebody gets cancer. It's bad enough. It's bad enough when anybody gets any kind of serious health condition. But then to have to also have the stress and strain that we put on our people, millions of Americans, tens of millions of Americans, maybe hundreds of millions. I don't know. We're even under the Affordable Care Act, we're still 30 million people are uninsured. And yeah, you can blame the Republicans for crap that they did, but let's be honest. The Affordable Care Act was a handout to pharmaceutical companies. It was a handout to big insurance companies. And they can decide whether they stay in the market or not. They can, keep ratcheting up their prices, as we've seen with the drug manufacturers. They don't care if we die, folks. And maybe you don't care either if you're one of these people who are so well off and in such a good condition, and your finances are in good shape, and you got a great job, or you've always been healthy. But let me tell you, this could happen to you, folks. It could. And it's not wrong to want something that the rest of the civilized world gives its citizens as a right. And don't give me this crap about, well, we support affordable health care. Right. That means we support the ACA. Well, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, is not affordable for a lot of people. For many, many millions of people, it's not affordable. It's not affordable. It's not as good an insurance as the woman and the man I spoke about earlier, who are stuck with his COBRA insurance from an employer, from like 3 employers ago. So just, it's true stories, folks. You wanna bitch and moan and complain about how awful it's socialism, or it's, the market works. It doesn't. It will never work in the healthcare arena. What will work, what works every place else in the world, is single payer or universal health coverage that allows, people to have portable insurance, so they're not tied to their employer, so they're not worried about losing their job all the time, so they're not forced to take low-paying jobs just to be able to have care for themselves or for members of their family. So they have to make a decision between risking their lives or risking losing their livelihoods, as this man and this woman I know, and I told their story to you today, have to do. So, I know I've run on a little long. Apologies for that. But please, take anything away from this at all. The reality for most Americans is that we're living on the edge of financial and health and all sorts of disasters that can permanently affect our lives and the lives of our children. And every time you go out and say, no, we don't need this, we don't need Medicare for all, we don't need single payer, you're pointing the finger at somebody like this man and this woman I told you about today. Or you're pointing a finger at somebody like me and saying, fuck you. You don't count. Your lives don't count, people. We got ours. Is that the kind of person you want to be? Really? I sure hope not. I sure hope not. So that's all I have to say today, folks. Stephen D. Steve Searles signing off. Wishing you all a better day than this man and this woman whose story I told you are living right now. Take care. Bye-bye.